If there's a win, then go get it.
What I call winning. If your goal is to be a better mother, if your goal is to get promoted.
If there's a life, you've got to live it.
So don't hide your superpower. Don't drop your mic. Don't lower your voice. Don't hide who you are.
If there's prosperity, I want you to have it.
Then what we aspire to become is really inevitable and not impossible.
And if there is wisdom, I pray you receive it.
And so I think the companies did not do a SWOT analysis of what could go wrong or what must be true in order for them to hire 50 or
IoT or all of the technologies that happen that we try to tighten up and shore up. But there's other factors that happen in the anatomy of a breach, and that is the human factor. We have that same mindset about it's just a matter of time, it's not impossible, it's inevitable, then that will guide our walk, and we will walk boldly.
Always find a way to win.
When you have this growth mindset, you say, you know what, I've won before, I can win again. I have so much to offer, I have so much to gain. I am not done. 1, 2, 3. Okay, you heard from them. We gotta go. We gotta win. God bless you guys. Hello, 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 everybody. Happy day, happy post-summer vacation. Hope your summer holiday was fantastic. Hope it was restful. Hope it was fun. Hope it was whatever you needed for it to be. My name is Daphne Jones, and I welcome you to the Winner's Circle. Today, we're going to be featuring a special guest, as we always do. But I wanted to just give you a little bit of a backdrop about who I am. Former Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer. I currently serve on boards of directors, and I published this book, Win When They Say You Won't, and you're able to get it almost anywhere. And now the host of the Winner's Circle. And this is a monthly podcast that we do featuring some really special guests. These live broadcasts are where I seek to bring you great people who serve others, who inspire others, who lead others, and whose outcomes will leave a legacy, and who always finds a way to win. In my book, When They Say You Won't, you'll find that I share other people's stories and triumphs, because I believe that by ourselves, we know a little bit, but when we tap into the resources of everybody else, we'll know everything. And the information that they have will then become the information that we now also have. So this series of monthly LinkedIn podcasts are curated to give you access to topics that might be on top of your mind. And I hope that these podcasts will help us learn more than we currently know, and hopefully inspire us to do more than we currently do. And so a couple ground rules. First of all, you all can do Ask Peter, hashtag Ask Peter, or you can do hashtag the Winner's Circle Live if you have a question. And we invite questions. This is going to be a great topic around technology and leadership. And everybody that's watching and will be watching will certainly want to understand more about technology and leadership. And the second one is the Winner's Circle is my video series. So I ask that you guys subscribe and like as much as you possibly can. So it's time to introduce to some and present to others a good friend of mine who is using his knowledge, his expertise, his leadership to advise businesses, Fortune 500 and bigger businesses, to be able to understand more about business and technology to help them to also win. That's what this is all about. We always have to find a way to win. He seeks to inform his clients to accelerate growth in their market. So let me tell you a little bit about him. His name is Peter, and Peter founded the tech and digital advisory firm called Metis Strategy in 2001. I guess we got to be doing a birthday cake, 25-year-old anniversary. He is an expert in business and information technology strategy. He's the author of 3 books, right? Best-selling books. Getting to Nimble is his latest one that he wrote most recently. And he's got Implementing World-Class IT Strategy, How Can IT Drive Organizational Innovation, and world-class IT. Why does businesses succeed when IT triumphs? He has moderated a widely listened to Technovation with Peter High. I think I'm trying to copy him with my podcast. But he has had 1,000 episodes, and I've probably had about 7. So I have a long way to go. But he has written more than 800 articles for Forbes since 2012. And it's always between the intersection between IT and business. He's been a contributor to the Wall Street Journal, to CIO Magazine, CIO Insight, Information Week. He's been the keynote speaker, and he has spoken in places like Canada, Mexico, China, India, Saudi Arabia, the UK. And he's lectured at many universities, of which I cannot name them all, but I'll say a few: Harvard University, Georgetown University, University of Maryland, University of Washington, Purdue, and the beat goes on and on. So he graduated from University of Pennsylvania with a degree in economics and history. And I will look to discuss with Peter with how do you win using technology and leadership when so many elements about technology and the business are changing so rapidly. How do we do that? So I encourage us to listen and let's explore. Okay. So with that, I would like to welcome Peter High to the stage of the Winning Circle podcast. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Daphne. I'm honored to be here with you, my friend. What a lovely introduction. Thank you so much for including me on your podcast.
Of course. And I don't know how many years we go back. I was looking for something from an email from you, and then I saw, oh my God, 2004 or something like that. I'm like, my goodness, I'm not that old.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, so we've known each other for a very, very long time. So I'm delighted that you agreed to come on here. So one of the things I want to start with is just your journey, like where you came from and how you got to where you are. You run a company since 2001, Metis Strategy. Can you tell me, first of all, where did the name Metis come from? What does it mean? And why did you start the company? What's it here to do?
Yeah, thank you. Great starting questions. I appreciate that. So Metis, first of all, is the Greek goddess of wisdom and Zeus's advisor, which seemed apt. It allows us to say that the people we serve are extraordinarily powerful and knowledgeable, like Zeus, and but even he sought advice from others, and Metis was his advisor. And what inspired me to do that? I graduated from college just a few years earlier in 1996. I started working with CIOs straight out of undergrad, advising them in a variety of different ways. Frankly, Daphne, I didn't know what a CIO was when I began my professional career, but I was very lucky to work with and collaborate with some phenomenal ones, especially at the time. I think back to an experience I had in Johannesburg, South Africa, in 1997 with the CIO of a bank there, a financial institution called Nedbank. And, thinking back to 97, even at that point, this person led innovation for the entire bank, reported to the chief executive officer, was really responsible for the art of the possible from a technology perspective, had a remarkable ecosystem inside and outside the company. And I came back to the US and was working with other CIOs who were not comparably oriented. And so the idea that there's a model that others might seek came to mind. And I looked to accrue the kinds of experiences such that I might be able to fill that gap to some extent. I had the good fortune of advancing, and at 27 years old, started the firm. And in some ways that was optimal timing. I had a little bit of a network for my age. I'd socked away a few dollars for a rainy day, and there'd be plenty of rain in those early days.
My son should talk to you. My son should talk to you about socking away money. But
yeah, exactly. It's an important thing, of course, if you're going to start a business. And but the nice thing is I was not yet married. I did not yet have kids. I've done all of that now. And so my risk profile was also a little bit different as well. I could take a risk, and if I fell on my face, I had confidence I could go work for somebody else again. And there were times in those early days where it felt like I might, but thankfully kept through a very trying 2001. Let's remember economic crisis, 9/11, a variety of things that happened there. But 2002 was a very good year, and then it kind of became much better from that point forward. So that was the genesis story for Metis Strategy and my having founded it.
That's awesome. One of the questions that came to my mind was about your purpose. What is your life's purpose? What's your life's mission? And is Metis pretty much helping you achieve it, or do you have another thing that you look to do to achieve your mission in life?
No, for the foreseeable future, I see myself doing what I do now, as I feel incredibly lucky for the job that I have. And Daphne, you know so well, as somebody who's led massive teams across multiple stops at places like GE and 𝗧𝘂𝗲𝗄 and the like, that I have the great fortune of working with a phenomenal team, a team of bright people who push my thinking and push themselves at the same time, in a space that is incredibly dynamic and among the most strategic of topics there is for any business. And so when you're pushed to learn, both because of the area that you focused on, but also by the great people that you have the privilege of leading, it's a great place to be. And so my mission is to be a lifelong learner, to stimulate the same in the team that I lead, and hopefully provide an extraordinary career for all who choose to join us, in addition to hopefully making a dent in the technology landscape and helping leaders achieve their goals along the way as well.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. And your goal, certainly is to learn all you can, and then you're going to be able to return all you can to these corporations and leaders, people who work with you and work for you. So that's a wonderful thing. That's great. Thank you for that. Let's jump to 𝗪𝗲. The book. Why did you write the book? Well, first of all, can you tell a little bit about what the book is about?
Sure.
I'd love to know, why did you write it, and why was it important for you to write it when you wrote it just a couple of years ago?
Yeah, exactly. Well, so first of all, the whole idea behind getting to 𝗪𝗲, Daphne, is that as the pace of change in business continues to hasten, and I would certainly say, as others do as well, that today is the fastest that the business pace has ever been, and yet it's the slowest it will be from this point forward. So you need to have an orientation towards constant change. And the whole framework and idea of nimbleness is setting up an organization to be able to withstand all of that change, and in fact to surf the waves to come, as opposed to having them crash over you. The nomenclature actually came from a 2016 podcast interview I did with 𝗪𝗲𝗄𝗆 of CarMax, then the CIO of the company. His title is now Chief Information Technology Officer, still nearly a decade later, a senior executive at CarMax. And I asked him, as I often do, I asked you this question way back when, in fact, to conclude an interview, what are the trends that excite you as you look to the future? And he offered a couple of technology trends, but what was even more meaningful in his answer was, look, the pace of change today is such that even in a couple of years, I might not be able to name what is most important. So I need to set up a company that is nimble, that can pivot towards opportunity and away from danger. I'm paraphrasing him, though directionally correct. Very much philosophically in line with some ideas that I was playing around with at the time. And I loved that framing, the power of that notion. And so diagnosed as a result of my many collaborations and interviews with your old cohort as CIOs, DOs, TOs at large-scale organizations, to decipher what are the factors that are the enablers for nimbleness, and articulate 5 thematic areas: people, processes, technology, ecosystems, and strategy. Each of them, these are not new topics, of course. You have a sense what every one of these mean, but each of them require a new way of thinking in order to thrive in the digital age, and indeed to be able to pivot towards opportunity as it presents itself, and away from danger as it presents itself, as each of those will be presenting faster and faster as time goes.
Right. Which of those, and by the way, as a former chief information officer, I remember the days, and it still happens with folks that I work with, where everything was about the technology. Give me, everything is a nail, if you will, so I've got the hammer, Daphne, I need another hammer, another hammer. And when you talk about process, technology, ecosystem, people, practices, we as CIOs have always known that the technology is going to work. The question is the data. The question is going to be the processes. Are you going to redo the processes, or are you going to keep them just as slow as they've always been and inefficient? And so it's a great point that you bring up. My question, though, is which of these 5 do companies struggle with the most, when they're trying to get their act together to be nimble?
Yeah. So different companies have different responses, but what I would say is, of the five, the one that appears most nuanced when I introduce this in organizations and help them institutionalize the thinking behind it is the one about ecosystems. And to define this a little bit further for you, Daphne, the way I highlight this is, CIOs, heads of tech and digital, need to be remarkably networked across their ecosystem. And I define that as customers of the company. So understanding the voice of the customer, how they're using technology, how their frustrations might be alleviated, how they can lean towards those things that delight them. That customer contact becomes so much more important to derive insights that will become the innovations of the future. A great peer network is a second aspect of the ecosystem. So making the wonderful thing that I've always noted is, a CIO of an aerospace and defense firm and a CIO of a retailer, very different businesses. Yes. And yet the overlap of what they're thinking about on a day in, day out basis actually is considerable. And so having a great peer group, not only in your own industry, but well beyond it, is a source of remarkable insight and inspiration as well. I would add a couple of others. Executive recruiters, not only to find your next opportunity, but actually to maintain contacts with those people to understand what skills are on the rise, which ones are becoming less important, how are responsibilities or purviews changing for exec leaderships, what sorts of org changes are happening that I need to be remain abreast of. The venture capital community is another ecosystem player to understand where smart money is being spent and why, and understanding further how those investment theses of theirs might translate back into areas of investigation and potentially investment of your own. And then lastly, I would say strategic partners. Every company of a certain size has key vendor partners that they're engaged with. Oftentimes it's work to be done. And I would say if you're choosing those strategic partners wisely, you should also be leveraging them for inspiration from across their vast array of experiences to help also stimulate the innovations to come as well. So I think ecosystems is the one that I would choose, Daphne, as an area to lean towards and ensure you're curating that kitchen cabinet that you have for greater levels of ideation and innovation ultimately.
Great. Wow. And when I think about this, the people, the technology, those are all internal. The one that is not internal is your ecosystem. So instead of navel gazing all the time about yourself as a company and all that, you need to also look outside to VCs, to search firms. You need to look outside and understand which way the wind is blowing so that you're ready to be nimble when it blows your way. That's great. Thank you. So got a question here. Peter, how can smaller businesses adopt the same level of digital strategy discipline that large companies have? Because, the small companies don't have the money, they don't have the resources, maybe not even have enough of the time to be able to do that as large companies do. How can they adopt the same level?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for whoever contributed that one. So one thing that I would say is, yes, the things that you mentioned, Daphne, are certainly often at least the case. But an advantage you have is you're in a smaller boat, and those boats can pivot a little bit more readily than a gigantic, ocean freighter of a Fortune 500 organization. And so oftentimes it's in smaller organizations where you know the executive team on an intimate basis. Perhaps you sit in the same place as them. Of course, there are all kinds of small businesses out there, but the extent to which some of the complexity is ameliorated because of size, the ability to create a mandate, to describe the art of the possible, to make the change that you seek, and have enough people to drawn together to make that change, oftentimes actually is easier within smaller organizations than it is in larger ones. Yes, there are going to be some, aspects of broader governance or some processes that may apply less, for example, certainly some technologies as well, some roles if you've got a team of 10 versus a team of 10,000. Right. But nevertheless, I think a lot of the same themes and sub-themes that I described in my book, I still apply, whether it's a company of 50 people or a company of 500,000.
That's great. And I can see how it could be more difficult. How do you get 500,000 people aligned on something? It takes a little bit more effort than to get 5 people aligned, on the same thing. Okay. So as you think back, can you share like one of your favorite case studies or conversations from the book more specifically that illustrates a successful digital transformation? Who got it right?
Example I'd give, Daphne, is Capital One, a company that's based not far from where I am here in the DC area. They're headquartered in McLean, Virginia. The gentleman who runs IT for Capital One, Daphne, is 𝗪𝗲𝗍𝗲 and has done for nearly 2 decades now. And he's someone that 10 years ago, maybe 15 even, began their digital transformation in earnest. And at a time where the notion of two-speed IT became often written about and even thought about and implemented within organizations. One, the speed of digital, one sort of a traditional speed, if you will, especially at large, complex organizations. He said, we're going to have one speed only, and it is a digital speed. And it's not going to be a light switch, so it's not like everyone needs to change immediately, but it does mean that we need to prepare our team for the change to come. And so we'll provide the training, we'll provide the rationale as to the destination, we'll provide better clarity around the institutionalization of agile practices, of DevOps, of new ways of thinking about security, certainly cloud technology, and modern practices across the board, but all of it very importantly with training there to provide the skills of the future along the way as well. And so he said, look, this will be a multi-year journey. Some of you will choose as we go through this not to come along with us, and that's perfectly fine. We'll help you find your next opportunity. But we want to be crystal clear that the goal is to get all in on digital. And in fact, Daphne, the Capital One is one of the greatest examples today that I can think of a company. There are many organizations that refer to themselves as a technology in the fill-in-the-blank industry. They truly are a technology company that happens to be in the financial services industry as a result of how the lengths at which they have taken this concept.
Yeah, that's terrific. So for those of you that didn't get, his name is 𝗪𝗲𝗍𝗲. Look him up. He's probably written a blog or two. So it would be really fun for you guys to take a look at him. And again, this is about learning. When we know just a little, but when we add other people's perspectives, we'll know a whole lot. So look him up. So I'm still going to ask a question about digital transformation. ROI, you know, I know there's use cases with AI and trying to figure out if there's going to be an indirect impact or direct impact based on, you know, on AI, whether it's on automation or customer service or whatever. Digital transformation. Can you talk about if you've seen companies that have demonstrated and received great ROI because of digital transformation?
Yeah, certainly, absolutely the case. And I think it comes in a few different areas. Number one, I would say, is speed. So a truly digital organization, one that has adopted modern practices for the digital age across the 5 thematic areas I've talked about, are built for speed. And let me actually add another detail, if I may. At a time, Daphne, where so many are rightfully lamenting how intellectual property rights are eroding as a result of artificial intelligence, speed is in many ways the new IP. And actually, I borrow that phrase from Sandeep Dadlani, the chief tech and digital officer of United Health Group, Fortune 3 company, who talks about that speed is the new IP. And I think that what we're talking about here in terms of true digital transformation is, in fact, catalysts for speed, getting to destinations faster, identifying opportunities more readily, clarity of purpose such that everyone is pushing in the same direction, even if you're a company that earns $450 billion a year, as does UHG. And so I think, you know, this speed is one of those important catalysts associated with this. Secondly, I think the revenue augmentation that comes in delighting and keeping customers as a result of great digital experience. You know, I think if we all know what great digital experience looks like, one thinks of, for example, like an Amazon or a Netflix, to take 2 very prominent examples of companies where you can't even find an 800 number. It's so difficult to actually speak with a human in these companies, and yet they know us so well. Yes. They're recommending things correctly, you know, that we might want to purchase or watch respectively.
Right.
And what we need to recognize as business leaders is the residue of that experience, even if we are not direct competitors of an Amazon or a Netflix, colors all of our customers, even if we're a B2B or a business to government company, to say nothing of a business to consumer company. And so we need to be thinking further about how do we create great experience? And in fact, it is that great digital experience translated into whatever industry we are a part of that becomes a tremendous catalyst for ROI as well. Again, keeping great customers, making them happy, having them purchase more of what it is that we provide, the services and products of our companies. I think that's an important aspect of this also. So a couple different thoughts in regard to the value.
I remember when I was at GE, Jeff 𝗯𝗰𝗇 would always talk about the power of 1%. And if a locomotive that's sitting on a rail yard can be assigned to the right train set of trains faster, 1% faster, if we can improve cycle time by 1%, because it could be a $30 billion cost, right? Cycle time. So if you can improve it by 1%, that's pretty significant. If you can, get, speed to market, time to value, mean time to getting a health or drug launched by 1%. And so it doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be something. And so I like the idea that speed is the IP, because without speed, it's hard to improve.
Yes,
That's
well
really
said.
great. I love that. All right, so don't forget, guys, ask Peter. Here's a question that has come in. When you look at the next 5 to 10 years, what quality will separate the leaders of those who thrive from those who will fall behind? So what quality or qualities or what competencies or whatever you want to use will separate the haves and the have-nots, the goods and the not-so-goods?
Yeah, great question. Again, thank you to whoever posed that one as well. I think, as I think about great leadership, I think of a balance between IQ and EQ. Certainly, of course, having great brain power and being able to leverage it has always been important in leadership, but also having great EQ and empathy and being a strong leader leading with EQ as well is an important aspect. Of course, leaders need to set vision and strategic direction for organizations. And even though the pace of change is so great, and so one might say, boy, as soon as you've committed a strategy to paper, as soon as the ink dries, portions of it are irrelevant. Going back to the speed point, so long as we have created this nimbleness within our organization and we have clarity of that vision and of that strategy and have everyone pushing in the same direction, we will reach that destination faster than our competition will, and thus we will win. To get back to a big theme of this broadcast, and so I would say that vision and strategic thinking continues to be incredibly important. Strong communications, incredibly important. And let's remember, especially strong communications at a time where so much more work is done virtually. Many of us still are, work from home offices, part-time in offices, not in offices at all. We may or may not be with our colleagues in ways that were the norm back in 2019 and for all days prior to that. Having strong communications offered in a variety of ways, and again, with great clarity along the way becomes very important as well. Yeah. Then additionally, factors like integrity and accountability, an ability to adapt readily and learn. We talked about that earlier as well. Learning agility continues to be an extraordinarily important aspect to foster within organizations. And then I think factors like authenticity, inclusivity have risen as really important aspects of what are differentiators for great leaders as well, at least those that I've diagnosed.
And, I read an article that talked about how employees they went from quiet quitting to quiet cracking. So now employees are just doing so much. They're afraid for their jobs. All the challenges that you hear about and read about in politics or government or what have you, people are wondering, are they going to be able to make it? So having a leader with these kind of qualities, who care, who have compassion, who has integrity, who will communicate, who has good, not only they're intellectually smart, but also emotionally intelligent with the EQ, I think that will go a long way to help our folks from feeling like that they're cracking, and they're cracking sometimes from the inside out. They maintain this face of strength and they're company people, but on the inside they're cracking due to the stress. So having a great leader, I think, like that is important. Okay, so I'm going to switch a little bit to AI/digital a little bit more. Many leaders feel, on one hand, they do feel excited. I always ask the question, is AI a tool? Is it a toy? Is it a teammate? Or is it a terminator of jobs? Right? So it's one of those four. People think all kinds of things. What mindset do you believe are most critical for people to embrace AI responsibly? How should we be thinking about this amazing tool that's actually been around for a little while, but how should we be thinking about it so that we can do a good job with AI?
Yeah, great question. Such a fundamental and profound one, especially today. So an analogy I'd like to begin with, Daphne, is the brakes of a car, the brakes on your car or mine. Why do we have brakes on the car? The quick answer is to stop the car. No, the brakes are there to be able to go fast. And so we need to, if we're going to leverage artificial intelligence and use it as a catalyst to speed, borrowing from a topic we've already spoken about a little bit, having great governance in place, that's the equivalent of those brakes on the car, having great security, thinking about elimination of bias and the recognition of the limitations of artificial intelligence are all important factors, not exhaustive, but I think some of the really important ingredients to ensure that we can get the value anticipated out of it, set the guardrails, but then encourage that experimentation. Once we have the playground, set aside and know that everything is as safe as we can get it, encourage broad experimentation. But that also requires having great training of our team, and not just our technical team, but of our entire team, to ensure that they are cognizant of what it is not, how we might leverage this, increasingly understanding where there is innovation that's already steeping throughout the organization and imitating that, at least the practices of that, encouraging others to lean forward to find new use cases and new ways to improve workflows and the like. And then build from an experimental phase to ideas that will eventually scale, especially if yours is an organization that is a large organization, making sure that you're also identifying ultimately those ideas that will be the source of the next considerable value contribution, not just a series of experiments along the way.
Absolutely. Okay, so one of the things that I have read about a lot is how your use cases, there's no guarantee. You can't assume that when you go into this that it's going to work. And so there's got to be a level of risk-taking, experimentation. But when you think that way, can a company really afford to do that? And I'm being devil's advocate, obviously, here, because I know what my answer, but can a company afford to take all these risks and experiment? Because, the analysts in the next 30 days, the next analyst call is in a month or a month and a half. And they want to know, how are you doing with your market share? How are you doing with your waste and your scrap and customer growth and all those kind of things? But you got these use cases that they're not going to all work. How do you not be afraid of that?
Yeah, you will certainly have naysayers, and you will have appropriate questions, of course, about the safety and the risk that is being introduced as a result of this. To innovate is to take risks, of course. To use the baseball analogy, if you're batting 1,000, then you are not innovating, right? There's a reason why it requires failing 2/3 of the time. Even if somebody who bats 300 or 333, they'll make the Hall of Fame in baseball because they're taking some risks. Likewise, we hope we have a much better batting average than 300. But nevertheless, we need to have an orientation at least to take some in order to innovate. And what I would say is to put your head in the sand and to act as though this is something that is going to pass us by in just a few months and we'll return to the old way of doing things is now, I think, largely disproven. If you think about almost the entirety of the market gains this year are through companies that have artificial intelligence as centerpieces of their business models. As you think about the vast preponderance of venture capital, where that money is going, it is into artificial intelligence companies. And increasingly, as you think about the most compelling innovations that are being derived across the landscape, so many of them have AI at least as a contributor to that. And so to have the mindset of safeguarding the organization all the way to the point of not using AI, ultimately you're taking the biggest risk of all, I would say.
Yeah. All right. So the biggest risk is to do nothing.
That's right. Yeah, well said.
Yeah, just get started. Get started doing something. So I serve on boards, and that's certainly a very important aspect of how the board looks at management team, as to what extent are they taking advantage of and exploiting AI, and with looking at the risks that are in place as well, and guardrails, and understanding the downside and the risks of AI. So that's great. Don't do nothing, do something. Okay. When I was thinking back about my role as a CIO, Chief Information Officer, we didn't have titles like Chief AI Officer. We just didn't. So many of y'all know how old I am, I guess. We didn't have, and chief digital officers existed a little bit, but they were mostly folks from marketing who did stuff, with external customers. Very rarely did you have a CIO serving as an internal leader, but also external market facing. My question is, how has the role of technology leadership evolved since you wrote, Getting to Nimble? I just think about Chief AI Officer as an example. Have there been ways that IT folks have evolved since the last 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, so if you think about the last half decade, so just the 2020s, Daphne, it has been an extraordinary time of change. You think, of course, at the beginning of 2020 and the pandemic.
Right.
And of course, from there, you talked about the war for talent, the quiet quitting. There, of course, were all sorts of supply chain issues. There have been issues of inflation. There's been political turmoil. There have been wars, of course, that are being fought that are consequential. And I'm just naming a few of the issues just since 2020. It's remarkable to think what a short amount of time all that I've described has transpired. And yet, this silver lining, let's take the pandemic. No one would ever wish for that, of course, and God forbid, of course, that it might return. But the silver lining to that for technology leaders was it was an extraordinary catalyst for digital transformation, because all of our personal supply chains went digital. And even those who were uncomfortable with the thought process of buying something online, of viewing something online, for our safety and the safety of our loved ones, we did so. And so at a time where so much was already turning the tide towards technology, going from where it was 15 or 20 years ago, kind of a lesser organization, a support organization, often sort of reporting to CFOs as opposed to CEOs, sort of a chief in name only, one might say, to a truly strategic leader within organizations. That was catalyzed tremendously. The advances that came in the early part of this decade were made this such that it was double, triple, 10 times the potential contribution as a result of the way in which all of our mindsets changed and our lives changed as a result of that. So what I would say is, I began writing this in pre-pandemic. I ended writing this in the throes of it. And if anything, so much actually was leaning towards the messages of this necessity for resilience and fostering that across organizations, making sure that, again, you can pivot away from danger towards opportunity. What I would say is it's all of that and more that organizations now have, unfortunately, in many ways, now need to have this nimble footing to a much greater degree, because every few weeks, it seems, and by the way, artificial intelligence being among those catalysts for remarkable change and rethinking of things as well. And so as each of these waves come, ensuring that you are setting up your organization such that you can absorb them, digest them, and see your way past either, again, taking advantage of things like AI, or withstanding the consequential and oftentimes cataclysmic things that have happened beyond that, I think are some of those things that if anything have been accentuations of what I was talking about in the book itself.
Right, absolutely. And I think the strategic nature, it wasn't always there. You didn't always have to be strategic as an IT leader, but now the technology is not the strategy by itself, but it certainly has to match the business strategy, and it has to be an accelerant of the business strategy as well. So the IT leaders certainly have to kind of step up and continue to step up and co-create the business strategy so they can go in and implement it. So speaking of implementation of business and technology, what about from a cultural standpoint? I forgot to ask that question earlier on. When you look at the 5 things that you focus on to help get to Nimble, culture, they say, eats strategy for lunch. And so, and when I was watching Satya, the CEO of Microsoft, he said they had a culture before he got there of Microsoft leaders were know-it-alls. And he said, this is just not going to work for me. And he turned the culture around, and now the Microsoft people are supposedly ask-it-alls. So they don't profess to be the smartest people in the room. They profess to be with the smartest people, which is the customers and others. That to me was a cultural shift. Can you talk about another organization that you have either coached or wrote about that actually went through a cultural transformation as part of the digital one?
Yeah, I think it's a great example you provided. Microsoft is in many ways the best example, and his whole Hit Refresh book is one that I recommend often.
Yes,
That is Satya Nadella's a book about the cultural refresh of the organization. If you think about their decade in the woods, and the so many people writing off this once remarkable technology stalwart. And the fact that it has not only risen again, but risen to the top heights to be among the top 2 or 3 most valuable companies on earth. It's extraordinary what he has brought about and his leadership team has brought about through true, as you point out, cultural change. I love the Peter Drucker quote that you talked about of culture eating strategy for lunch. It's one I think we all need to contemplate. And so, what I will remind leaders is, we all have a culture in our businesses. We choose to define it or not. And we should define it, recognizing what is good, but also recognizing what is aspirational. Where do we want to be? And then we as leaders need to live that ourselves.
Yes.
The make or break on the change we seek is going to be the degree to which the leader walks the walk. That's the talk is very important, of course, communicating this and the why, but also then living that change and showing the rest of the organization through your actions that you are doing so. That's really important. So, the 𝗧𝗂𝗲𝗍 of the Microsoft anew, the new culture there. I think we can all learn a tremendous amount in thinking about the whole notion. We have two ears, one mouth. Use them in proportion, I think it gets back to the thought process we talked about earlier of leaning towards EQ as an important catalyst for the change we're talking about.
Absolutely. And so this is not only for Microsoft trillion-dollar companies. This is for anybody.
Yes.
Remember that culture is one of the most important things that will help the company get to greatness. So I appreciate that. So in your podcast, Technovation, who has been your most unexpectedly, and if you can't say their name because they'll get embarrassed or something, that's fine. You can describe it. Who was your most unexpectedly inspiring guest, and what did you learn from them?
Well, actually, I would love to tell you about my most recent guest, as I think it actually is a great answer to the question. So my broadcast yesterday, we came out on Mondays and Thursdays, 104 of them a year. Monday, my guest was 𝗪𝗂𝗍𝗂, and 𝗪𝗂𝗍 is the advisor to the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine on innovation, digitalization, and global partnerships. And that follows a 6-year period where she was the Deputy Minister of Digital Transformation in Ukraine. She came onto this post at 28 in 2019, 28 years old, the youngest administrator in the Ukraine government, a former entrepreneur. And so I'd never heard of her. Her team reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in interviewing her. And as I learned more about her, it was just extraordinary to understand further the extent to which digital transformation has been a catalyst for remarkable things within that country. She set in 2019 a mission to create the most convenient digital state in the world for citizens and businesses. And what a fantastic mission to create. The governing body, the organization that rates this, rated them at 105 back then, by the way. So it's not like they're already at 2 and they just needed to move up 1 spot. And so tremendous change that was necessary. And luckily for them, they got to work in 2019 before the pandemic. And let's remember, of course, before 2022 and the invasion of Russia, by Russia of the Ukraine. So they put together a remarkable set of digital services, everything from like the first country to offer a digital passport, the first country to be able to get married fully online, the 4th European country to offer digital driver's license, the world's fastest fully automated business registration process. Now 91% of all newborns are registered through this digital ecosystem they call DIA to register organizations. DIA, by the way, being the Ukrainian word for action. And so this story that she told me as it unfolded the hair on the back of my neck was standing up the entire time as she was talking with optimism and with great pride of what she has accomplished. And of course, as the backdrop and the elephant in the room, that this is a country that is in war. As she was talking to me, the backdrop to where she was a country at war. And so, and just a remarkably inspiring story of the role that digital transformation can play. Let's remember, in 2022, many pontificators said that this would be a war that would end in days, maybe weeks. And now it's 3 years later, more than 3 years, 3.5 years later, in fact. And it unfortunately continues to go. But it's, I think, in no small part due to the great work of leaders like 𝗪𝗲'𝗍, that to enable the organization, the country rather, to do extraordinary things.
Absolutely amazing. So I'm going to look her up as well. And I kind of wonder, where's their data center? When you
question, I don't know the answer to that, but yeah.
Bombing going on all over. I mean, unless it's in another country, or it's just, it just boggles my mind about how they're able to do so much. So the word impossible is just somebody's opinion, right? Somebody had
put it into context.
Yeah, if somebody had told her it would be impossible to do these things, she just would look at them and say, "Okay, watch me."
Yeah, so that's right. That's right.
We can learn from that. That's great. What is the, one leadership trait that you believe cannot be replaced by AI? You think about integrity. You think about emotional intelligence. Whatever. What are the things that you believe that people are afraid of their jobs? They're afraid that AI is going to take their job. What is it about AI that it just can't do?
Yeah. So look, it is a powerful thing, and you and I both talked about, we need to embrace it, I think, in so many ways. But I think we do need to diagnose what its limitations are, at least as of now, right? It does not yet have the judgment that people have. Many have likened. I wish this were my thoughts. It's the work of others that I'm highlighting, including 𝗯𝗰𝗇, the great professor of Wharton, who's written volumes on this and a phenomenal book on the topic as well, who talks about basically think of it of generative AI as being like an intern, that you've got infinite access to infinite interns. So ambitious, hardworking. By the way, they never get sick, and they will they'll do work while you're working on other things. But just as with a human interns, you would never take the work from an intern and immediately take it to a board and present it. You need to look it over. You need to understand that there's going to be issues of judgment. There are going to be hypotheses that are incorrect. And so we need to, I think it's a good analogy. Yes, it's coming up, and it will be much more advanced in the months and years ahead. So I don't mean to say it's going to remain at the intern level, but I think it is not yet the replacement for the judgment that we humans have. We need to apply that back to them. We need to provide the vision as to where to point the activities that generative AI or even agentic AI may take on. That I think remains a truly human activity.
Yeah, and I think about I always say that AI is just like your child. Whatever you let your child watch on TV, whatever you let your child read, that's going to be in their brain. And so AI is really what's based on what you give it and how it's able to take that and learn. And you think about judgment, this gentleman, this poor kid who committed suicide because AI told him how to do it. And when he failed the first time, apparently AI said, "I'm a failure," and AI said, "No, you're not a failure. You just didn't do something right. Let me show you how to do it better the next time." And so AI answered the question perfectly, but it didn't have the judgment to say it shouldn't be answering that kind of a question. And I know they're going to put, guardrails around it based on the type of questions that are asked, but it's a great point. The judgment it doesn't have, and we miss this young kid. We as humans missed that this gentleman was not happy and wanted to kill himself. So can you imagine that we can't blame AI because we as humans didn't even stop him from hurting himself. But AI is based on what we teach it. So it doesn't have judgment. That's a great point. So let me ask you another question. Looking ahead, so going forward, oh no, wait, there was something about nimbleness I was going to ask you. Never mind. Your concept of nimbleness is more crucial as market changes accelerate. What are the capabilities of an organization that makes it truly nimble from just going fast?
Yes, great question. I think that what we often see, this is something we diagnose a tremendous amount in these startup to scale up organizations, many of them, although not exclusively so, but many of them in Silicon Valley, for example, that there's a fast pace that happens when you start a company. And many of these organizations, especially software organizations, can achieve scale very rapidly. So in 5 or 10 years, they may have hundreds of millions, even billions in revenue, and yet they still have the practices of an organization that is at least an order of magnitude smaller than they are. And so what the whole idea, the notion of getting to nimble and the nimble framework provides is in fact that framework to ensure that you don't become a victim of that success. You know, if you continue to have great pride in, and think of governance or process as simply bureaucracy and red tape, well, then your orientation is going to be such that you will eventually become a victim of that, of your own success. You will grow to the point where you are so unwieldy that you can't grow any further, and then start to head in the opposite direction.
That's right.
So yeah, speed, I think, as we talked about, it continues to be a very important aspect of this. But I return to that analogy of the brakes on the car. Great process, great governance. These are the factors that ensure that you're doing so responsibly, that you can go fast, but you're not going so far past the speed limit such that you're going to hurt yourself.
That's right. Got it. Great point there. Is there, on the opposite side, are there warning signs that leaders should watch out for that let them know that their organization might be failing or falling into a digital transformation trap that could really hurt them? And how do you course correct before it's too late? So how do we know that we're not doing really well in the digital transformation era?
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of this comes back to the innovator's dilemma. Clayton Christensen's timeless book from 1997. I think I reread it every so often. It is such a fantastic set of insights that once we achieve a certain amount of success, there's a tendency to simply coast on that and not recognize that we need to be our own best competitors. Frankly, we need to eventually cannibalize that which has been the source of our success. You know, I think I tell a story in my book of Circuit City. Circuit City was the best performing stock of the 1980s. So for a decade, and by the way, it didn't go public until I think it was 1984. So it did not even have a full decade on the stock market. But a retailer of all industries was the best performing stock because they sort of invented the big box retail experience. They did so in consumer electronics at a time when that was taking off. Think VHSs, think hi-fi stereos. Think about all the peripherals associated with that to make the experience better. And they had phenomenal salespeople that you go in for a television, you come out with a variety of other boxes to make that experience of the television so much better. And in 2000, in the 1990s, they founded a number of other companies as a result of their remarkable windfall. By the way, CarMax was one of them, so still a phenomenal going concern. But they started at other kinds of technology organizations, financial institution, and while they were kind of having this period of taking the focus off the ball, rather, that's when Best Buy came into play with the Geek Squad. So all of a sudden, that great service you were getting in the store was following you to your house and setting this complex array of things up in your house. And Circuit City completely missed the boat on that. Now, mind you, in 2001, they were still good enough that they were featured in Good to Great, Jim Collins' also phenomenal book about organizations that have gone from good performance to truly great performance. Right. But I like to remind people that was written in 2001. 2009, the company was liquidated. Good to Great to gone. Just 8 years later. Wow.
So those warning signs, it's like you can't get complacent. Don't read your own headlines. Always seek to, I'll say, self-disrupt, because when you self-disrupt, you become agile, you become nimble, you become resilient, as well. But if you're not self-disrupting and you're reading your own headlines, then chances are you're not going to do very well for long. All right, I got it. All right, so Real quickly, my last question before I do a little lightning round with you will be, what gives you hope when you look ahead, and it's like your own personal reflection about the future of business, technology, and leadership? Is it going to be okay? Are we going to be okay? All this digital stuff coming at us, technology, AI, and quantum, and you name it. There's so many things going on with technology, and then the leaders have to kind of keep up or stay ahead. What gives you hope that we're going to be great?
Yeah, thank you. It's a really nice question, Daphne. I mean, there's a lot that gives me hope. I'm a dad. I have two boys. They give me remarkable hope. And when I look at them and their friends, how the younger generation is engaged, how they think about issues certainly differently than I did when I was their age.
Right.
Big issues, in fact, and they have big opinions. I don't always agree with them, but I love the fact that they're engaged, that they're thinking about their future and decades ahead and the sorts of things they need to be thinking, whether it's climate change or mental health that you referenced before. These big ideas that were probably not on your or my mind in the same way in the early part of our careers or when we were in college or high school. So that the younger generation gives me a lot of hope. I would also say I derive a tremendous amount of hope with the advances in science and technology. If anything, with AI as a tremendous catalyst for continued change and innovation there. I'm hopeful, I'm sure like me, you've been impacted with loved ones and friends who've perished from cancer. Gosh, wouldn't it be amazing if we get to a day in the not too distant future where that and many other diseases are solved as a result of continued innovation in these areas? And the advancements that are happening give me great reason for optimism. And, I think ultimately the resilience of people in the face of great change is something, as we've talked about, so much has been foisted upon us in the past half decade, and our ability to digest that and keep going is another source of hope for me, at least. So a few things anyway, as I reflect on when I think about that really great question of yours.
Well, and then when you this is not, I'm going to just do a little sidebar here. You talk about your kids and the next generation. So here's a lightning round question. Would you rather go 100 or 200 years in the future where you can meet your great grandchildren, or would you rather go back 100 years so you can talk to people of that you knew, that you didn't know but always wished you had?
Well, yeah. So I think if I had to stay in the period, I think I'd like to go forward as opposed to backwards. I don't want to go back 200 years in the life expectancy of that time and all sorts of
You'd be dead by 55. You'd be dead by 55.
Exactly. That's right. I'd be dead now. I'm 51 now, and I'd be probably well past my shelf life as a result of that. But no, I mean, it's a great and interesting question. I hope anyway that we will continue to make a variety of progresses such that if we were to go forward, we would be stimulated remarkably by all the innovation that was brought about. Let's hope, of course, that somehow the world is a better place at that point.
Yeah, I pray. I pray. If you had the chance to go to dinner with one amazing person, a historical figure, whether they're dead or alive, who would it be and why?
That's a great question. Goodness.
Great.
I mean, I would love to. I never met my grandparents, so maybe I'll say my grandfather on my father's side. My dad is my hero, and my sons and I were just recently talking about him. My wife, just what a great guy my father has passed, and thankfully my sons got to know him. And he was such a great influence on our family. We wonder sometimes, gosh, what was his dad, my grandpa, my son's great grandfather like to have, and my grandmother as well, such that they created a model for him to follow, just as we have done the same. And so, boy, I would love to have met my grandparents since I didn't have that benefit, and yet I benefited so tremendously from what must have been remarkable parenting on their side.
Absolutely. That's funny. I never met my grandparents either, and my son never met my parents. But my grandson has met me.
Oh, wonderful. That's so great.
I really resonate with your point, and hopefully I'm going to be as great to my grandson as clearly your dad was to you. So I pray.
I'm sure that's true, Daphne.
Yeah. Last question. If your career had a mascot, what would the mascot be?
What would the mascot be? Goodness gracious. My motto is nothing ventured. I'm sorry?
It wouldn't be a bull, would it?
Yeah, no. I don't think it would be a bull. Goodness gracious. I don't know, maybe a rocket. So kind of like always upward and upward trajectory, heading for the stars. Is something along those lines. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind anyway.
Okay, fantastic. And maybe the caption will read "True North" or something.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. It's a good strategy analogy. I like that.
Well, that's great. Well, we have run out of time. We're actually 1 minute before 6 here on the East Coast. And Peter, I just thank you so much. You've been delightful. You make talking about technology a lot of fun, and but you also dive deeply into the character and the emotional intelligence and the culture and all those things that make it all come together. So I appreciate you. Before we go, I would like to let you guys know that we have coming up really soon. October 16th, we're going to have Kay Foster is going to be my next guest in October. Kay is a dear friend, former CHRO of Johnson & Johnson, board of Spelman. She's a BCG executive. She's just really terrific. Nichelle Maynard-Elliott and Kelly Woodruff are going to be my guests also. We're going to have 2 winner circles in October. 2. And we're going to talk in October about getting ready to serve on boards. And what does that look like? How do you do it? How do you do it well? What should you do? What should you not do? So this is part of our fall lineup. They're both going to be on the call on October 22nd. And then finally, for those of you that may or may not know, Bishop 𝗧𝗂𝗍𝗆, who happens to be my brother-in-law and is the pastor of City of Refuge in California, is going to also be my guest. He wrote a book called The Power of the Mind. And for those of you that know me, have read my book, read the beginning, you know that I believe that the winning may actually happen at the end when you achieve that goal, when you pull that cord and you get that trophy. But winning really starts in the beginning, in the mind. And so we want you to be there so he can talk more about his book. And then we're going to have the masterclass conversation. We're going to be having a masterclass in November of 2025. It says July, but it's not July. It's going to be in November. So we're having a masterclass. And Nichelle is actually going to be joining us in October to talk about what does that masterclass look like, about how do you get ready to serve on boards of directors, and what does it actually take to do it. So we're looking forward to a great fall and 2 actual winner circles in October, which is a first for me. But we thought it would be really great because the masterclass is going to be happening in November. So I thought that would be a good time. Okay, and with that, I look forward to you guys coming back to meet with Kay and to meet with Nichelle and Kelly, and then of course my dear brother-in-law, Bishop 𝗧𝗂𝗍𝗆. With that, Peter, I can't thank you enough. You're delightful, you're fun, and hopefully I can return the favor somehow with you in the future.
Thank you so much. It's been my honor, Daphne.
Thank you so much. And I wish all of you guys a great rest of the day. And I want you to always find a way to win. Take care.